Your success will be more shaped by your losses than your wins. No, that's not a philosophical sermon and it's not a feel-good session. It's actually mathematical certainty and a lesson in content marketing. Buyers who leak from your funnel haven't leaked forever, they're just not ready to engage right now. Often it's a question of priority or timing. Today I'll show you how to not only stay positioned with those leaked buyers, but also to influence what they think so that when they do re-enter your funnel, they're more ready for the sort of services that you offer and the problems that you solve. Buyers progress through our funnel and we're happy with that. Let me show you an example of buyers moving through a funnel and the leakage that occurs when buyers don't move through the funnel. In fact, to do that, I'm going to get out of the way and just let me put a few figures up here on the screen instead of my ugly mug. So I'm going to start with 500 and let's move buyers through the funnel. Now, we could actually describe that as a series of progressions, if you like. We had 40% successfully moved from one stage to the next, and 75% of the next stage, and 67% of those got to the next stage, and then 33% of those got to the final stage. But you could also talk about that in terms of leakage. 60% didn't make it from the first stage to the second. 50% of them failed to make it to the third stage. 25% of them failed in the next, 33% at the next, and 67% at the final. But if we took those 300, and we put them back into the funnel, and clearly we could then take those 300 and they would probably be subjected to the same kind of ratios, plus or minus a bit. What if we then took the additional buyers who hadn't progressed in the first stage? Remember in the first model we had 500 became 200, there's 300 lost. Pull the 200 became 100, so there's another 100 lost. So if we put the leakage from every stage and leakers who leaked and then leaked from a later attempt and leaked from a later attempt and put all of them back in the funnel, it's probably going to look a little bit more complicated. Let's put that up here. Well, it's not only more complicated, but it's also more rhythmic in the sense that now we've got a fairly frequent pattern of buyers re-entering the funnel, or at least us remaining positioned to try to get them to re-enter the funnel. Now in that example we had 500 names. 483 of them got recycled at least once. How do I know that? Because 17 bought on the first round. But in reality most of them got recycled many, many, many times. And if that's the case, wouldn't it make good sense to have a robust recycling program of some description to get your buyers back into your funnel and to influence them along the way? Let me show you that same story using a slightly different example. I'm going to get out of the way again so that you can have a look at the funnel plan that we've been using for these blogs to make the point. So in this blog we had 1,410 customers. And we needed to position 8,421 times, let's call it a bit over 8,000, to do that. Now if we've got recycling actively engaged though, we only need a bit over 2,000 targeted buyers, meaning we end up sitting at around 65% share. If not, we need all of those positioning occasions to come from different buyers, and that means we're sitting at around 17%. That's 1,400 wins from 8,400 buyers after 3 years. Which would you rather? So how do you recycle your trash? Well, for a start, they're not trash. These are next quarter's and next year's buyers. So clearly we're going to treat them with the same respect we treat those who are in our funnel right now. But how? I mentioned at the top of the video that we need to achieve two things with our recycling. Firstly, we need to remain positioned. If I reach out to you now as a first time, you know who I am, but later on you forget who I am. So we need to remain positioned. But secondly, and just as importantly, we need to influence the concept that the buyer has, so that when they re-enter the funnel, they're perhaps better positioned, or we're better positioned with them perhaps, to earn the right to serve them down the track. Well, how do we do that? Lots of content. The content needs to be really valuable for them but it also needs to be really effective for us, and there's a real balance to be struck here. Certainly write it firstly for the buyer, but before you put pen to paper, write your conclusion first. Where am I trying to get you at the end of this piece of content? Well, of course I want to remain positioned, but I probably want to slightly influence your thinking. I'll give you a somewhat self-serving example. We don't invest in these blogs for fun. Certainly we're happy to put back in the community, but it's a marketing tactic for us to employ. So what's the purpose for us with these blogs? Well, you probably already know that the problem that we work on solving is my sales and marketing engine is underperforming. And my purpose in these blogs is to have you feel a little uncomfortable about whether you have a coherent, bought into, fully embraced approach to funnel management. And to know that if you don't, there's ways that we can help with training, planning, and software like the funnel plan that I use in these blogs. I'm doing it in a way that's sharing legitimately valuable content with you that you can take that content on its own and never engage with us. But I'm also doing it in a way to remain positioned with you, but influence what it is that you go looking for in the market. So I know that's a bit self-serving, but that's kind of what our blogs should be doing, is to strike that really careful balance between being legitimately, genuinely valuable. And I have to say I'm really pleased that so often I'm getting emails from you thanking us for the contribution that we're making. Delighted, really delighted. And our motivation is two-part, partly to share legitimate value, but again, partly to trouble, position, as I hope this blog has done. Nurturing or recycling is a slow burn, but a really, really good one. For our company, 67% of our revenue over the last 3 years has come in through warm inbound inquiries. Now, it took us 3 years to get to that point that we've been at now for 3 years. Slow burn, but a good one. Genuinely, 67% of our inquiries are, hey, can you help us with planning or training or actual execution to get our funnel operating more effectively. A slow burn, but a really good one. Now in a moment or two I'll show you how we do that in funnel plan, but first I want, as I usually do, to do two things. I want to share with you the conclusion, that is, how do you actually build a robust content program for your own business that nurtures your prospects? And I'm going to invite you to receive more blogs like this. Let's get to that conclusion though first. How do you build a robust recycling program to handle your leaked prospects, get them back into your funnel, and somewhat better educated about what it is they should be looking for? There are really 7 steps. The first one is just to build the case. What's the value of having or not having a robust recycling program? I gave you some of the maths from the funnel plan before. Build your own case. The second one is to build a content roadmap. We call it a content roadmap. Identify the problem that you solve better than anybody else on the planet, and identify all the possible topics that you can around that content. Different ways of talking about the problem, its consequences, its causes, things that trigger it, topics that relate to that problem. Third, build your content. That's kind of obvious, but I wouldn't start with the content. I'd start with a case, and then I'd start with a content roadmap. Fourth, automate the sending of it. You need your content to be shared in as automatic a way as possible so that you're focusing on watching what's happening rather than on the manual send process. Next, you need to automate the identification, and that is, when do I know that I need to put somebody into a nurture program? And the big trick here is that if it normally takes, for example, 2 weeks for a buyer to move through the second stage and the third stage, or the third and the fourth, or the fourth or the fifth, whatever normal is for any of those stages, if somebody's been stuck there for half as long again, so 50% longer than normal, or even twice as long, take them out, they're not going anywhere. So look for those kind of triggers and automate getting them into your nurture program. Finally, be patient. Your recycling program is not demand generation. I know that everything that we do in B2B marketing is supposed to play a role in demand gen, and it does. As I told you, 67% of our revenue comes from that source. But be patient. This is not urgent, buy now or you'll forever lose. This is much more subtle, deliberately so. So quite clearly separate your demand gen tactics that are perhaps a bit more assertive, and then those who don't respond to that assertiveness because they're just not ready right now, put them into the nurture program. When they show interest, maybe you can be a little bit more assertive then. So there it is. They're the steps that you need to take. By the way, I missed at the top of that what I call identify your corkscrew. Forgive me, I'm going to insert at the top. There are actually 7 steps. You need to identify the medium through which you're going to convey your ongoing thought leadership. We call that a corkscrew because if you imagine, this is a metaphor, if you imagine trying to rip a cork out of a wine bottle, aggressively you're going to crumble the cork and spoil the wine. Instead, we slowly turn the corkscrew and it pulls the cork out a little at a time. And your recycling program needs to do that same thing. Little by little that you're influencing the buyers, moving them forward just a little in their concept. So there it is. And this time I'm going to read from my list so I don't forget. Build the case. Identify the corkscrew. That's what tactic will you use. So I'm using these blogs, but what's the tactic you're going to use? Build your roadmap, then build your content, automate the sending, automate the identification, and finally, be patient. It's a slow burn, but a worthy one. Well, if you enjoyed that blog, then hopefully you would enjoy others that we also produce in a similar vein. If you have already subscribed, thank you. Hope you're enjoying it. If you haven't, then can I recommend you go to mathmarketing.com/blog and choose either the twice a week or once a month editor's grab, if you like, just the once a month one. Or go to YouTube at this address. Now, if you have, but you've got a colleague who hasn't, then please invite them along. I'd be so grateful if you did that. In fact, why don't you do that now? Either subscribe or invite a friend. Come back and I'll show you how we do that in Funnel Plan. Okay, so here's how we do that in Funnel Plan. Let's zoom into, in fact, firstly, let me just take a look at the velocity section before the tactics. This is the case that I was talking about earlier, and I used this same example earlier in the blog, is that you can see that if we have recycling in place, we're going to end up with much better than 50%. In fact, it's pretty close to 65% market share. That's a wonderful position. If we don't, then all 8 and a bit thousand of those positioning occasions need to come from individual buyers. We end up with more like 17% after 3 years of hard work, and I know which I'd rather. Now let's take a look at the tactics in the funnel plan. Now see, firstly, that we've assumed that we're going to have this recycling tactic apply from interest established all the way to the end. Now, why doesn't it include positioning, given that you know recycling has a positioning effect? Well, the answer is because when a buyer has successfully exited recycling, they've acted in some way, then they've shown interest. So our next stage in the journey is in fact going to be interest established. And you can see in this occasion that the next tactic is to click through to the blog. But you can also see that the blog is leading to some sort of bigger, more high engagement tactic, like a white paper or a research paper. In fact, as an example, we might want to lead you after this blog to go and read our research report into how to align sales and marketing to get more than 200% more out of your marketing. Yeah, I know it's a subtle ad, but there we go. It's a blog, forgive me. But that's an example, right? So when a buyer goes through and reads your blog, don't leave them there. What's the next step that you're going to offer them? I'll show you how we build a content roadmap, the actual mechanics of building a content roadmap to populate your recycling with great content on another day. But for now, may your funnel be full and always flowing.